righty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, we're going to be talking about a commitment that OU picked up. We haven't ever talked about him on this show, but it's a good addition to the running back room. And we're going to be doing a Big 12 preview, basically going through every other Big 12 school, previewing who's going to be a top producer, biggest threat to OU, and kind of a little bit of a preview of what the standings could be at the end of the year. But before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're knocking the door to 4,900 subscribers. So if you're here again watching for your 75th time, you might as well hit the subscribe button. It's free. Turn that notification bell on. We're going to be going live on August 22nd, I believe at about 8:30 Central Time. Also, for all our members, we're going to be planning to do a Zoom call at 8 o'clock Monday, August 22nd. So if you guys would like to do it, great. Just let us know and comment on the post that we're going to post in the members only group. And anyone that isn't a part of the members only group, it's $4.99 a month, more content, and a lot of good Sooner stuff that we can get more in depth on in that group. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple or Spotify. Everything's linked below. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, follow the channel, leave us a review. It helps us out a ton on that platform as well. All right, so let's get into it today. Seth Gamble, Seth M. Gamble. He's a 5'10", 215-pound running back out of Mundy's Mills High School in Jonesboro, Georgia. He announced today that he's committed to Oklahoma and another addition to the running back room. Brandon, do you have any thoughts on him?
I'll let Hose go first. He plays linebacker too. I know that according to his own huddle page. And I also know I saw from someone else's Twitter, be careful when you Google Seth Gamble, because if you do not type in Seth Gamble football, you will get a different type of Seth Gamble.
Yeah, I think you said that Seth Gamble measures in at like 5'6", 165 or something like that. So not the football player. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say this kid's going to be like a big contributor, especially early on in his football career, but he's definitely got an opportunity, just like everyone else. I would see him more of an H-back role, maybe kind of playing, Jeremiah Hall kind of player with how big he is. I'm sure by the time he would get to college, he's probably going to be asked to gain maybe about 20, 25 pounds because he's not the fastest guy on the field. And he does have some fullback reps in high school, which is a weird thing to see at the high school level. You don't see very many schools run any kind of fullback plays, especially if you watch his highlight tape on his huddle. It's not like goal line every time. Sometimes it is, with some decent field to run. So he'll definitely push and people in the weight room. I think that's where he'll be a great addition in motivating guys, making sure that he's going to be fighting for every minute he can on the field. And if he impresses in the weight room, I would assume that the coaches would give him an opportunity in goal line plays. I think that's where he would be the biggest addition.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's not a bunch of tape on him as far as other than his huddle video. He doesn't even have a 247 profile. So someone that's definitely been under recruited. Obviously, the staff saw something in him and made it worth an offer to him, and he ended up committing. So at the end of the day, more depth is, the better. And maybe down the road, maybe after a few years, he might be a contributor 2 or 3 years down the road, but it's tough to say considering that he's just kind of came out of left field. So yeah, another addition, can't complain. We're just going to keep on chugging along in the recruiting. I mean, Saturday, tomorrow, we're going to be possibly seeing another commitment for Oklahoma and Jacoby Johnson.
I think we will, right? We all think we will.
We will.
I'm texting my Mustang plugs and finding out some stuff, boys. I'll see what I can find out tonight, and I'll make some shit up and text you guys.
Perfect. Sounds good. Reliable inside sources. So, but yeah, he's going to be announcing at, I believe, 5 p.m. on Central, or 5 p.m. Central on Saturday. I believe that is the time of his announcement. So be sure to be on our Twitter and Instagram. We will be making a post one way or another, whether he chooses Oklahoma or he chooses Stanford or another school that he's considering. All right, so let's get into the Big 12 preview. So basically how we're going to go about this, we're going to kind of follow along OU schedule, talk about some strengths and weaknesses of each Big 12 school, where they kind of lie on the schedule and some potential hiccups and some other things that OU could come across. So the first Big 12 game is going to be Saturday, September 24th at home against Kansas State. And we were talking about some of these games before we even got on here. And, Brandon, I know you and I both agree that good thing that Kansas State's at home, just because after being on the road at Nebraska, I believe that OU beats Nebraska, but, it could be a very emotional win in Nebraska. And then coming home to play Kansas State. And, you can't forget Deuce Vaughn. Everyone won't forget Deuce Vaughn, but also their quarterback is Adrian Martinez. And Martinez played pretty decent against OU last year in the Nebraska OU game. So he's already got some familiarity with Oklahoma. Kansas State's got some pretty good talent across the board. And I think they're a top half. They could finish top 3 or 4 in the Big 12. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be this team could definitely be good. I think Brandon, whenever we were talking about the schedule in our, what the expectations that we had for Oklahoma, he pointed this out as a team that could sneak up on Oklahoma and potentially be a loss for us. And I don't think he's wrong at all. Adrian Martinez is like a 10-year starter at the college level, it feels like. So he's got to be good enough to play. The running back's definitely going to be the biggest concern. How are we going to stop Deuce Vaughn? It always seems like those small, shifty running backs are a pain in the ass for every team. And, Oklahoma's no exception to that rule. I do think the Nebraska game is going to be super pivotal to this game because both teams could. I think what would be likely is Oklahoma would come in 3-0 and Kansas would be 2-1. Potentially their one loss coming to Missouri. Not that I know a ton about Missouri, but I would assume that's going to be a pretty tough matchup. Right now, Kansas State is favored in that game. So there is a world where both teams are undefeated going into this game, and it will be a dogfight in that. So I do think Oklahoma wins it because we are at home, but it's going to be a tough one.
I agree. I think we win, but it's not going to be a gimme game. Historically, not historically, but recently, this Kansas State team has given us fits, and Skylar Thompson has given us fits, and I don't see them being a much drop-off between Adrian Martinez, if at all. Martinez was pretty good against us last year. I think he'll play that same – he plays the same – a very similar style to what Skylar Thompson does, I think. He's a mobile quarterback that can also beat you with his arm. And then Deuce Vaughn seems like every time we play Kansas State, he goes for at least 100 yards. Granted, that's against the old staff, so maybe that will change a little bit. But Deuce Vaughn's a hell of a player. And then defensively, they got Felix and Duke Azoma. I'm pretty sure there's no way I said that name right, but the dude had like 15 tackles for loss total, 11 sacks last year. He's their best player on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, coming off that Nebraska game, there's a lot of things that circle to that game being a trap game. I'm glad it's not in Manhattan. That would be real tough to go from Lincoln to Manhattan back-to-back weeks. I think just having that home field edge will push us over against the Wildcats, but they are going to be a tough, sneaky team this year. And I agree with Brum as far as they can finish 3 or 4 overall in the conference this season.
For sure. And, at the end of the day, should Oklahoma beat Kansas State? Yes. But, it's not the same coaching staff, but Kansas State has proven over the last few years that they can go into Norman and beat Oklahoma, or they can beat you at home and play you really close. And that's typically, that's what I'm expecting out of this game. Their defense will be solid. Martinez brings a lot of veteran leadership, but, Martinez never really took like that next step at Nebraska with his consistency. But Deuce Vaughn will put together a solid season before he goes off to the NFL because he's basically their number one option in offense. So we'll move on to the next game. This will be on the road in Dallas at TCU. TCU, they're going to be a pretty solid squad too. Max Duggan, the quarterback, is projected to be their starter there. Last year, I think he threw for a couple thousand yards last year, well, just over 2,000 yards. And their number one wide receiver, Quentin Johnson. I don't know if you guys remember Quentin Johnson, but he has given OU fits. He's 6'4". He's just basically mossed over everyone in our secondary for, I've seen that once or twice before. I can't remember how many yards he had against Oklahoma in his one, in the game last year. But I felt like I always saw him catching a bunch of footballs.
He had a lot.
185 yards.
And like 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, on 7 catches. So
something like
this stretch of games going from Nebraska to K-State to TCU is going to be the challenge. Each of them is going to bring a new challenge to the defense. I think Nebraska is going to be challenging our defensive line, making him prove how good can you really be under the staff. K-State, their linebackers are really going to be challenged, having to follow that little fuck Deuce Vaughn around the field. And then this game, and it's not like this is coming out of nowhere. Our DBs and our secondary will get challenged, having to go up against that enormous human being named Quentin Johnson. You can't have him go for another 185 yards in a game. Like if he gets 100, it's fine. He's a super talented player, but you can't have him just be essentially the only player really producing for that offense. Like slow him down a little bit, make Max Duggan question the fact that he's throwing it to whatever side of the field he's on. And I think going into the Texas game, a lot of confidence could be had by that defense.
I think with Johnson, he obviously ate against us, but if you look at his numbers the rest of the season, I don't think he played all that well. I'm pretty sure he just had a field day against Oklahoma.
He's pretty good. He had 142 yards against Baylor and 113 against West Virginia.
Okay, but outside of those 3 games, so I guess he had 3 games where he popped off, and then he was relatively held quiet.
He only
when I was looking at his numbers.
On ESPN, it looks like he only played 5 games. I'm not sure.
Okay, so he was just really good. Okay, yeah, whatever. But despite him having a hell of a game against us, I remember him mossing Billy Bowman a couple times. Max Duggan doesn't scare me. TCU doesn't scare me as a team that went 3-6 in conference play last year, from what you alluded to. And also, correct me if I'm wrong on this, TCU, despite Quentin Johnson's huge game against us last season, we still won that game by 20 plus. And that was kind of the first game last season where we were like, oh shit, maybe we're okay. I mean, or not okay because we played horrible defensively, but I mean, we beat them like 52-28 or 52 to something. 52-31, I think may have been the final. But so it wasn't all that close, despite his huge game. I kind of envision us winning this one pretty handedly.
I would agree. Also, TCU did lose Zach Evans to Ole Miss, so that can't be understated. I mean, he's a star running back. You say what you want about him off the field, but he is really productive on the field. I do expect OU to take care of business. I don't think they're going to look ahead to Texas. I think they take care of business. And I know some people were hoping that maybe Chandler Morris would be the starting quarterback for TCU, but I think Max Duggan has got this all but locked up, based off of his performance last year and everything that's been kind of trending his way. So I think OU takes care of him.
We definitely can't look past TCU though. I think you brought up a good point there because last year they were one of 2 teams in the conference that beat Baylor, who did go on to the Big 12 championship. So they can definitely bring 100% and can click on all levels. They can beat anyone, but Oklahoma's got to find a way to slow that down.
Honestly, you look at most of this conference every single week, you could lose. I mean, outside of Kansas, I know OU played them close last year. I don't consider that to be relevant for this year, but a lot of these teams you could lose, if you're not bringing your A game and focusing in. So next game, and I think this one will be a hot topic, is the Cotton Bowl against Texas. OU, Texas, one of the best games of the year every year, one of the best trips down there. Obviously, Texas has brought in Quinn Ewers as the Ohio State transfer quarterback they've got Bijan Robinson. They have Xavier Worthy out there as a wide receiver. Their offensive line seems to be getting better. It's kind of one of those deals right now. It's like every year, Texas has all this hype, all this momentum, all the big headlines, favored to win, do things like that. And at the end of the day, what do they typically do? They typically lose 5, 6, 7 games a year. And they lose one or two games early in the season that they shouldn't lose, and then it just goes off the rails. The linebacker should be really good for Texas as well. It should be a strong point with Overshawn and then Brockmeyer, I believe. They're kind of their two main guys. They're going to be pretty solid along that linebacking core. And I really don't know too much about their secondary, but I don't expect Texas's defense to be that great. I just remember Overshawn last year. He's pretty solid. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to mention the linebackers. Overshawn was eating against Oklahoma in the first quarter, but he did go away once Oklahoma was gaining momentum. So I don't think it's something that would be impossible to overcome, but it will be having to kind of neutralize him or not make him a factor in the game early on. I mean, as much as they seem to lose every single game, they do have talent, like you said, Brum. From what has been reported by like their beat writers down there, Quinn Ewers isn't showing like he is the next coming of Vince Young or anything. He just looks average. Apparently he's been having trouble separating himself from Hudson Card. So I'm currently with what's coming out of their camp. It doesn't sound like the quarterback is really any better. Who knows what will happen as the season progresses? Maybe he can get better. He's supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks coming out of high school in his class. We'll see. I mean, you have to at least respect the fact that they do have one really talented receiver in Xavier Worthy and one of the best running backs in college football with Bijan Robinson. I think if we're able to do a similar thing that we did last year in pretty much neutralizing Bijan Robinson, we'll be all right. If Bijan has a game, that's when it can be a little closer.
Neutralizing Bijan Robinson last year. Did we watch the same game?
He had one big run, and after that, it wasn't like he was eating on us.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, we'll look it up later, but I'm pretty sure the dude was close to 200. And I know he had that one huge run that was ridiculous where he was throwing people off of him and it hurt. But I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, he was close to 200.
I'm looking it up.
And all that doesn't come from. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you said it. He's one of the best running backs in the country. Xavier Worthy is, at the end of the day, a pretty good receiver. But the thing with Texas is people drink this burnt orange Kool-Aid every single season. How long have they been back? They've been back for every year for 7 or 8 seasons now that they're back. And I think with Texas, it's not just because I hate them, because I mean obviously I hate them. We all hate them on this show, but as talented as they are, because they're talented every single year on paper. I mean they recruit well every single year, no matter who's there. They got 4 or 5 stars coming in all the time. So the talent should be there as it is always. But I'll believe it when I see it type deal with Texas, no matter who the hell they have on the roster, because they consistently underperform. I think it's bad coaching mixed with just who knows, just whatever it is. But like a team that talented, and this is we almost did it, but we didn't. A team that talented shouldn't lose to Kansas, and I'm sure you guys are sure they haven't beat Kansas in football in over 1,000 days now. I see it on Twitter every day, and it's one of the funnest things to look at on Twitter. But it's been over 1,000 days. But overall for Texas, I think a lot of their season, like ours, is dependent on the success of QB1. Quinn Ewers, he was number 1 overall recruit. He was, number 1 across the board. So the dude's clearly got a little bit of talent. But, I mean, he's got Bijan, he's got Worthy, he's got a talented team. But, again, I'll believe it when I see it. I expect Oklahoma to win this game, and I also expect Kansas State to finish higher than Texas in the Big 12 overall standings.
It's a pretty good take right there. I mean, I don't think that's unreasonable to see Texas finishing 4th and Kansas State at 3. I don't think that's ridiculous at all. So moving on, next game at home against Kansas. Last year obviously was a very close game. I don't think any of us envisioned that to be this year. Last year at the quarterback's position, Jason Bean was the quarterback for Kansas. but it seemed like he's lost his starting role to Jalen Daniels. Pretty solid as far as pass blocking. I remember last year we weren't hardly able to get any pass rush on them. I mean, I don't really know what to say about Kansas other than OU should beat them by 50, and they will, and that's kind of what I expect out of that. Brandon, what do you think?
I mean, agreed. This one's hard to even really talk about. It's at the end of the day, it's Kansas. If it was basketball, we could have a lengthy discussion because obviously Kansas basketball is a thing. But if this game's close at all, I'll be disappointed. This is a game that we should go back to boat racing them. I expect a huge Sooner win. It's in Norman. There's no reason that we shouldn't win by 4 touchdowns plus.
Yeah, I agree. Kansas will more than likely be last or second to last in this conference. It's just going to be a race for a couple of teams on not being below Kansas. But really quick, going back to the Bijan thing, he did have – so his longest carry was 50 yards, and I'm pretty sure it was that one where he was just throwing guys off of him. Without that, he had 19 carries for –
I think it was $137. 100. I have 137.
He had 20 carries for 137. Without the big run, he had 19.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you were right.
Maybe neutralize wasn't the right word, but he wasn't a major factor.
Yeah. No, I guess that one play just stuck in my head too long, and I was just like, man, but no, I think when you look the numbers up, you were pretty correct to say neutralize or slowed him down.
All right. Yeah. So we expect OU to take care of business against Kansas. I don't think that's going to shock anyone. The next game, OU has an off week or a bye week, the weekend of the 22nd in October. Then they go on the road at Ames on October 29th at Iowa State. Their quarterback is Hunter Deckers. He's filling the shoes of Brock Purdy. He's coming in as a 4-star. He's a local Iowa kid. So he's going to have some big shoes to fill. The offensive line was pretty bad last year for Iowa State, and it's probably going to still be bad unless something crazy happened. I picture this guy running for his life. They lost Breece Hall, so he kind of lost. He's losing his safety net per se. They do
and Charlie Kolar.
And Kolar, you're right. Yeah, Kolar's gone. They're getting Xavier Hutchinson back as he was all big first team Big 12, I believe. Mm-hmm. So he ended up putting together a pretty good year. I honestly see Iowa State. I see them finishing 8th, probably, in my opinion. This team's young. They lost a lot of talent, and I just don't think that they have the depth there. Brandon, what do you think?
I think they can finish just slightly higher, maybe 6th or 7th. I mean, at the end of the day, they are a very well-coached team. I do like Matt Campbell, what he's done at Iowa State. I think he's doing a fine job there. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think you're right. There's too much that they lost, especially offensively. Huge contributors to their team. Breece Hall was their best offensive player last year, and I don't think that's a stretch to say or anything ridiculous. He's obviously gone. Charlie Kolar was very sure-handed, and Brock Purdy was a solid as hell quarterback for them for a long time. Ames is a tough place to play, so I don't know that we'll just murder them essentially, but I don't think it'll be all that close. I think they lost too much. But yeah, I think they can 6th or 7th in the Big 12 is where I kind of have them.
Yeah, they're definitely in a reload or rebuild mode. Even on defense, they lost their leading tackler. They lost the guy that led them in interceptions last year. They did bring back Will McDonald, who I believe was leading them with sacks. So it's not like their defense is without a leader, but it's going to be tough for some of these guys to get up to speed. It is going to be, like Brandon said, I think Matt Campbell is a good coach, and he could put them in a position to not look absolutely terrible, but I also don't think they're going to be, competing for a Big 12 championship this year like they did in 2 or 3 years ago. And also Lincoln Riley's gone, and Matt Campbell did have Lincoln's number, so I don't think it will be as easy of a game for him. For
sure. I don't think that he's going to be able to outmuscle and outwork this Brent Venables team. And that's basically what Matt Campbell was doing. So the next game, it's at home. It's a big game, November 5th against Baylor. I feel like this has implications of the Big 12 title, Big 12 seeding potentially when it comes down to it. You know, we're getting into November, championship November. You know, it's time to play the best ball. You've got Baylor. Gary Bohannon ended up transferring to USF because of being told he's the second string quarterback. Gary Bohannon did visit OU in the offseason one weekend before determining his final destination. And Jose was not a big fan of Bohannon, but Brandon and I both believed in Bohannon to be a solid quarterback. I mean, he played great last year, in my opinion. Not a Heisman level, but I thought he was a very serviceable quarterback. But Baylor, they ended up losing their starting quarterback, and they're turning to Blake Shapen. And Blake Shapen was not supposed to play last year. Gary Bohannon got hurt late in the season against Kansas State. And then Shapen played a few games of the regular season and then ended up playing through the rest of the season. I know Bohannon came back some, you know, I think he played in the Sugar Bowl that they played in, but not much. And Shapen also, you know, he put together a pretty solid little run towards the end of the season to help them win a Big 12 title. But here's the deal: when you do this and you only have a small sample size and you go, he's our guy, sometimes it's a flash in the pan and then it just ends up not working out the following year. Because I mean, you think of first guy I think of is like Cardale Jones. I'm not saying he's Cardale Jones because they didn't go win championship with him, but you know, he put together a solid run of 3 or 4 games and then he just kind of, you know, fizzled out. He wasn't what everyone thought he would be. You know, the front 7 of Baylor is going to be strong.
Cardale Jones was too focused on his schoolwork.
That's true. School was very distracting for him. But Aranda's going to be able to put together a very strong front 7. They are losing a lot of depth at the safety position in the defensive back room. So OU with Dylan Gabriel might be able to expose that and really put them in a tough spot. And I think OU's offensive line will be able to hold up against Baylor, and they should beat Baylor. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The more I look at this Baylor team, the less intimidated I am. I think their defense is going to be good, but their offense, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I mean, I was doing a little bit of digging as to like what led to the decision of Blake Shapen being the starting quarterback and announced so early, which I think was the right move for both Shapen and Gary. Gary got to explore his options, and luckily it wasn't Oklahoma. And you know, Shapen's got to take reps with the ones the entire spring, all summer, getting into fall camp. So, I mean, he does have some things to prove, but if he is what Jeff Grimes thinks he is, which I would assume is at least something like a Zach Wilson, because he was Zach Wilson's OC in BYU, he could be pretty good. But they did lose their running back who went for 1,600 yards last year. They lost at least their leading receiver. I think did they lose them both? I can't remember. If you guys can remind me. I know one of them's a Patriot because he scored in today's preseason game. They lost their leading tackler and they lost Jalen Petrie, who was one of the most annoying players to play against last season. And he's really good. And then they lost their other safety in JT Woods. So the defense is very depleted. Aranda can put a good one out there, but their offense, I think the same question that a lot of people have about Oklahoma is the same questions for Baylor. We trust that the head coach can put a really good defense out there, but can the OC put a good offense out there? And I mean, we'll see. Jeff Grimes did have a good offense last year. I just don't know how they're going to replace the production of the running back mainly because, you know, Gary was an average quarterback at best.
I think Arrowhand's okay, but I think what you just said there, just to finish your point there, is what I was going to kind of agree with. I think they did lose, you just mentioned it. They lost a decent amount of pieces defensively, but we don't follow Baylor recruiting, obviously, as closely as we do at Oklahoma. But Dave Aranda, we've seen the defense he puts out there. They give us fits. They give Caleb Williams fits. He's a good defensive coach. I trust in that he'll bring in some good guys to replace these pieces lost. Maybe not recreate the production they had last year, but I think they'll be close to it. There'll be some growing pains and stuff because they are playing with a bunch of new guys, probably a young team, but I think Aranda's that dude when it comes to a defensive minded coach. Last year, Baylor, they're your defending Big 12 champions, and until someone beats them, they will remain that. So I do think that this is a preview of the Big 12 title game. I think Oklahoma should win it, could win it. But this is your preview of the Big 12 title game. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were without a doubt the best team on the offensive and defensive line last year in the Big 12. And I'm pretty sure they only lost one member from each side, so they should maintain that pretty dominant trench play on both sides. They'll be tough. This is your Big 12 championship preview. Hopefully OU wins.
Yeah, it could very well be the Big 12 championship preview. It wouldn't surprise me. Part of me somewhat thinks, as much as I don't want to believe in Texas, I feel like Texas will put it together this year for some reason to compete for a Big 12 title.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
No,
you just said it. You're drinking the Kool-Aid. You just said you think they're going to put it together, and this is the year that they go to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I kind of think that they do. Because Baylor, at the end of the day, that they're putting all their eggs in one basket with Shapen. I don't know if Shapen is that guy, and you got to have a guy that'll carry you there.
Is Texas not doing the same thing with Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, but I feel like Quinn Ewers' ceiling is a lot higher than what Blake Shapen is.
That's fine. Quinn Ewers hasn't played one college down yet, though.
And there's a lot more talent around Quinn Ewers.
He's also played 0 downs.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I kind of think Texas is going to be in the Big 12 championship with Oklahoma. And I think OU beats them, but I just think that's my preview. So move on to the next game. We'll be on the road Saturday, November 12th at West Virginia. West Virginia acquired a new transfer quarterback, just like Oklahoma did, and this one is JT Daniels. This is now his third home, coming from USC to Georgia to now West Virginia. Graham Harrell is their new offensive coordinator. He coached at USC, just not when JT Daniels was there. When JT tore his ACL in 2019 was Graham Harrell's first year. So they've got a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback. Their offensive line wasn't that great. They got some transfers along on the defensive side. Neil Brown is probably on the hot seat. At some point, you have to put together a pretty solid program and win a lot, or I guess a lot for their standards anyway. And I feel like that the seat could start to get a little warm on Neil Brown if they really struggle this year. And I see them in the bottom 3 as well. I kind of see them competing with Iowa State, who's going to be in 7th place. That's just my opinion on that.
I agree I agree with where you have them finishing. JT Daniels, he's a talented dude, but we looked up before we got on here. He's the dude who never finished the seasons. He didn't finish it last year for Georgia, couldn't finish it for Southern Cal. They're a team, kind of similar to Kansas. The only thing that is troublesome for this game to me is the fact that it is in country roads, and that place is, it's a fun college football atmosphere. If you're a West Virginia fan, it's not fun for opposing fans. We've seen the year that Kyler Murray took us to the playoffs, we had a dogfight in West Virginia. Granted, we had probably the worst defense in the world, but they gave us everything we wanted and more. I think West Virginia is a tough place, but I agree. We should win. They're a bottom tier Big 12 team at the end of the day. There's no excuse to drop it.
Yeah, we might as well just go ahead and name Garrett Green as a starting quarterback for when we play them, because JT Daniels won't survive that long. He's probably been a starter just as long as Adrian Martinez at the college football level, so they're experienced. I don't know. West Virginia, the fact that it's on the road is what's going to be the difficult part. It's so late in the year, probably going to be a pretty cold game. Not like Oklahoma's not cold at that point in the year, but it's a little bit different. I don't know. Should be fun. It should be fun because we're absolutely blowing them out. But I guess if JT does survive that far into the season, he could have a decent game.
It could be, but I just don't. I don't know. I don't see it. So I think OU takes care of West Virginia. West Virginia is a bottom of the Big 12, competing for 7th. I don't know. Iowa State, between Iowa State and them, they're going to be 7 and 8. Then Saturday, November 19th, we're at home against Oklahoma State for Bedlam. I will say that, Spencer Sanders is coming back, so they've got that leadership there. They put together a very solid year last year as far as, almost winning a Big 12 championship. Love how close they got, but they didn't win it.
The 8th place stand at the 1-inch line. That's Oklahoma State in a nutshell. They had 8 chances from the 1-inch line to win a Big 12 championship. 8 of them.
I know, and the refs even tried to help them out, but it didn't end up working out. I think overall they're going to be they're going to be solid. They're going to be competing for the Big 12 championship. They very well might beat out Texas and play OU in the Big 12 championship. Tay Martin is done. He's gone. And then you look at Presley. Presley is pretty solid. That defensive line and that defense will be pretty good. They have Derek Mason taking over, so there's going to be a little bit of a transition there. Colin Oliver, unfortunately, is one of the guys that I'm upset about with the previous staff, because Colin Oliver wanted to be a Sooner, and Lincoln Riley and his staff offered him way too late and just strung him along, and ended up, costing Oklahoma. Colin Oliver, I think he had like 10 sacks last year. He's going to do well. They're going to be strong along the defensive line. They're going to play well in the front 7. I see them finishing in the top 3 for the Big 12. I see them either 2 or 3 between Texas and them, and I think Baylor's 4. So I'm kind of giving where I think these teams are going to be, in my opinion. So I think they're a top 3. They're going to compete for a Big 12 championship. They're going to have an opportunity to play in the Big 12 championship, but I think OU still beats them.
I think they're 3. I agree with the top 3 take. But you mentioned the defense being good or, being fine. First of all, Spencer Sanders, I don't think he's it. That dude, I've just never been a huge guy on him. He clearly is the best quarterback they have on their roster, and they're going to rock with him. He's very experienced at this point. But I don't think Spencer Sanders scares anybody, to be honest with you. I mean, he's okay, but he's nothing that scares you. You mentioned the defense, and Jose and I were actually talking about it before you hopped on here. I think it's going to be a decent-sized drop-off for them defensively. I mean, they lost the leader in Malcolm Rodriguez on the field, who was, if not Colin Oliver, it's what's 1A or 1B as far as who was their best defensive player last year. Malcolm Rodriguez is gone. Jim Knowles, who was defensive coordinator, is obviously gone. Took the Ohio State job, took 2 or 3 dudes with him. I think they're going to drop off defensively. So I agree with you on the 3 or 4. I might have Kansas State over them. I don't know. That one's tough. But I think that they're going to be worse than they were last year defensively, probably similar offensively. But I think just being a little bit worse on defense cost them an extra game or 2, because we don't forget this Oklahoma State team. Of course they beat us, and they made the Big 12 championship and all that, but they were one possession away from losing to FCS Missouri State, and they hung on for dear life to beat Tulsa last season too. I mean, it's the same team that did that. Like, both of those things happened. So I think Oklahoma State will drop off a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough to replace the defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles. I've been trying to look up, a little bit of history on Derek Mason. Last year was his first time as a defensive coordinator, but it was at Auburn, and that place is probably the most dysfunctional coaching situation in all of college football, or one of the most dysfunctional ones. So I don't think maybe judging him from last year would be a completely fair situation. So let's just say that he's essentially a first-year defensive coordinator as just a head defensive coordinator, because he has been an assistant DC before. He has to learn how to lead that unit. And for his position, because I believe he coaches the secondary. That is a relatively young crew back there. They're going to have to do a little bit of developing with their secondary. I know, talking to one of our friends, they're excited about, I think it's a redshirt freshman safety that they think is going to be pretty good. But again, it is his first year, so you do have to give him a little bit of slack there. I mean, I do think they should finish third and maybe even compete for number 2 spot. I just don't believe in Spencer Sanders. I think that guy is absolute cheeks. Losing their running back is going to be a big loss for them. And that defense, I mean, we talked about it again beforehand, before we started recording, losing their linebacker,
Rodriguez. Malcolm, yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest loss that team had this last year. If they can find a way to even replace half of his production, that defense will be fine. But that's a tough guy to replace.
It will be. I mean, yeah, you can't understate the value of Malcolm Rodriguez. I do agree. I think Spencer Sanders is what holds this program back. And they won't be able to win a Big 12 championship this year. They'll win probably 9 games if I were to put a number on it. But I just don't see them getting over the hump. If they were going to win something, it would have been last year, and they just didn't get it done.
They had chances. 8 of them from the 1-inch line. Don't forget.
They had a lot of chances there. And then finally, Texas Tech at home, in Norman, to wrap up the season. OU is going to probably run over Texas Tech. Texas Tech does bring in a new head coach, Joey McGuire, from Western Kentucky. He put together a humongous air raid attack with Bailey Zappi last year for the Hilltoppers. He ended up breaking records and everything else. So he's bringing in an extremely efficient and potent style.
That game's in Lubbock. Sorry. Yeah, that one's in Lubbock. We played them in Norman last season.
You're right. My fault. You're right. It's in Lubbock. So it could be a night game. Could be where tortillas flying around. You never know. OU is probably going to run them over. You've got a Tyler Shaw, who's transferring in from Oregon after a couple years as a Duck. He played a few games up there. He broke his collarbone. I don't see really much out of Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech finishes 9th and in the Big 12, and that's my prediction on them.
I agree with you. At Texas Tech is shit. I don't think they're going to be very good. We boat raced them last year. Caleb Williams threw like 6 touchdowns against them last season. I don't envision, I think that we have the capability of beating the hell out of them, and we should. And I think that Texas Tech as a team overall will finish last or next to last in the conference. They might be better than Kansas. I agree with all of that. That being said, still something about going into Lubbock last game of the season. It's probably going to be a night game. As you mentioned, the tortilla. Weird shit happens in Lubbock when you're the away team, especially at a night game with tortillas and shit. So it does scare me. It's a game that, I think we'll go 10-2 this season. I really do. For some reason, this is one of the games that scares the shit out of me. There's just something about Lubbock. And it's I think we should win, but it scares me. But overall, I agree. Texas Tech does suck, and I think they will finish second to last in the conference.
Yeah, I agree. It's Joey McGuire's first year. Wasn't like the big reason that they wanted to hire him is because he is really well known in like high school, at the high school level for recruiting purposes.
He sits on some sort of like Texas high school president's board thing, or he did, or maybe he still does. I don't know. He was high up in Texas high school football.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they have a really good future ahead of them. I know they have a decent recruiting class. They did fill that thing out pretty quickly in this next cycle. So to me, it looks like they're just trying to be like the Oklahoma State version of Texas, just really stick to their Texas roots, recruit in Texas, obviously go out a little bit in the region to try to recruit, but I just don't see them being impactful this year. And I know Lubbock can be an intimidating place to play, but I don't think that it's going to be a huge factor. Maybe by that point, their offense will be rolling a little bit because it's the last game of the season. I would hope they have a little bit better understanding of the playbook. But on the other hand, Oklahoma's defense should be on an absolute tear. And I think this is the game where if Oklahoma is, let's say, 11-1 or 10, hopefully they're 11-1. This is, or 10-1 going into this game. This is the game where Oklahoma can put a stamp on their invitation to the college football playoffs. We have to make it. It would have to be an extremely convincing win, by like 3 or 4 touchdowns, hopefully even more. But we'll just have to see. I think Texas Tech just isn't too much of a factor in this year's Big 12 conference.
I think if you go 11-1 to finish regular season and then win the Big 12 title, finish 12-1 overall, obviously we don't know what the other teams look like this next season because they haven't played yet, but I think a 12-1 Oklahoma Big 12 champion has a strong argument for the college football playoff. I agree with you on that.
For sure. Yeah, you got to get some style points. Overall, I think OU does play really well. I could see them. There's a world where OU goes 12-0. Most likely 11-1, 10-2, just depending on certain things go away from Oklahoma. As we sit today, as we're recording this is airing on August 12th. I'm going to just go through where I think the Big 12 standings end at the end of the year. I'm going to put Oklahoma at number 1, Texas at 2, Oklahoma State at 3, Baylor at 4. I think Kansas State's at 5, TCU at 6, and then I think Iowa State at 7, and then West Virginia at 8, Texas Tech at 9, and Kansas at 10. So that's my 1 through 10.
That was going to be the end of video challenge. I was going to do like a top 4. You went ahead and went all the way with it. I think we'll go Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma, Baylor, Oak State, Kansas State, Texas, TCU at 6. I'm okay with that. I'll ride that wagon. 7. I'm blanking, but those are my top 6.
West Virginia, Iowa State.
Oh yeah, Iowa State, West Va, Tech, Kansas.
There you go.
I'll just do a top 4 because who cares after that? Oklahoma. I'm gonna put Oklahoma State because they still have a decent defensive line. Then I'll go Baylor and Texas at 4.
All right. Well, Brandon, I apologize for taking the individual challenge.
Second time in a row, you dickhead.
I know. I did it. So do you guys have any final thoughts?
Nah.
No. All right. So do the individual challenge. You can do 1 through 10, or you can do top 4, top 6, whatever you prefer. At the end of the day, Jose is right. If you're not in the top 4, then it doesn't really matter if you're 5th, 6th, or 7th. So if you made it this far, hit the subscribe button, like the video, turn the notification bell, follow us on all our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us on Apple and Spotify. You can hear the dog barking in the background. He's yelling at me. Everything's linked below. Leave us a review, leave us a comment, and we will catch you guys next time.